Democracy in darkness. That's the slogan of the newspaper, The Washington Post. It is the first thing on the top of their homepage, and if you still get a print copy, it's on their newspapers too. Their reporters embody that slogan through their relentless and crucial and fearless reporting, whether it be their extensive work uncovering the horror of the January 6th attack on the Capitol in their backyard and Donald Trump's role in it that earned the Post the Pulitzer Prize for public service, or the reporting today that we spent the better part of an hour talking about Donald Trump's former chief of staff telling the Washington Post directly about his concerns that the ex-president would use the U.S. military against American citizens on U.S. soil. The work of the Washington Post has been elevated here, not that they need it, but it's been essential, especially when it comes to highlighting the threat that Donald Trump poses to democracy and to the First Amendment. In the backdrop of all of that, the Washington Post editorial board made a stunning decision today that for the first time in 36 years, the Washington Post editorial board will not endorse a candidate for president. Washington Post CEO Will Lewis writes this about the non-endorsement today, quote, "We see it as consistent with the values the Post has always stood for and what we hope for in a leader. Character and courage in service to the American ethic, veneration for the rule of law, and respect for human freedom in all its aspects." I don't even know what that means, so thank goodness. Joining our conversation, NPR media correspondent David Folkenflik here. He broke this story about the Washington Post this morning. David, before we start, let me just play for you the person who I think most Americans most often associate with the journalism of the Washington Post.
Well, you know, he will say things and do things. Again, maybe it's possible if he became president. One thing I have learned from writing about 10 presidents, as I said, going back to Nixon, is the extraordinary concentration of power in that office. A president can almost do anything. As we see daily, something comes up that really doesn't relate to presidential power, and reporters, our colleagues, will ask the White House, what does the president say? What is the position of the White House on this? So count to 10. The country better count to 10 before they think about putting Trump back in power. It would, it's not political, it's not personal, it's organizational collapse. Is this what people want? People who are business people who run organizations or in organizations know the chaos that can be created if there's no plan and there are no group of people working together. That's the promise of the Trump presidency.
So they may not have endorsed, but we'll play that every day until the election if we have to. Your understanding of how this came to be?
Sure. From what I'm told from three people with knowledge inside the Post, direct knowledge, the editor of the editorial pages, David Shipley, had approved the directions of a draft editorial endorsing Kamala Harris. And, essentially said, well, I got to take this up to the big boss. And that means Jeff Bezos, of course, the founder of Amazon, the owner in total of the Washington Post. Now, this isn't a break with tradition. This is a common practice. Publishers and owners get a role in this. It's not an interference per se. It's prerogative. However, for the owner to decide not to endorse so close to Election Day is really a stunning move. It's particularly stunning in light of the recent history of the Post. In many ways, Bezos, despite all of his wealth, he's one of the world's richest people, but also one of the most important business figures in the United States. For all of his interests, has been heretofore an essentially exemplary owner, not interfering with coverage of his own business interests or political interests at all. In 2016, the then publisher, Fred Ryan, didn't really want the paper to endorse Hillary Clinton, which seemed likely at the time. The editorial page editor at the time, Fred Hyatt, considered resigning. Jeff Bezos' response is, why wouldn't we endorse? This was a race between whom? Well, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, whom the Post already had grave reservations about. Since then, the Post, of course, has done crusading reporting from its news team about, just as you highlighted so deftly, about Trump's role in office, often uncovering accused improprieties and alleged wrongdoings by then President Trump and his circle. And the editorial page, which of course is run separately, has so often argued that since then that Trump has been proven unfit for office, particularly in light of what happened in January 2021. Well, Shipley came back this morning at his 11 o'clock meeting to tell his editorial board, in fact, what he had known for some days, which is that Bezos had vetoed that and said that there would be no editorial endorsement from the Post. And it just set off, a firestorm inside that newsroom. And you've seen to a great degree online and in person outside the newsroom as well.
Can I show you what Donald Trump said yesterday about journalists and the press?
Sure.
They're just bad people. And until we get a fair and free press in this country, they're just bad people. They're the enemy of the people. They are. They're the enemy of the... I've been asked not to say it. I don't want to say it. They're the enemy of the people. And someday they're not going to be the enemy of the people, I hope.
I don't know Jeff Bezos, but what it looks like is call and response. Donald Trump telling them not to be bad, and Jeff Bezos saying, sir, yes, sir.
And I did a story about this very question yesterday, before even this played out at the Post, but acknowledging there was some trepidation within the Post that Bezos might reach this decision. And that is the question of whether there's some sort of preemptive self-censorship. Trump, after all, running 50-50, essentially, with Kamala Harris for the presidential race that will play out in less than 2 weeks. And Trump has, both in light of what his actions were in government, which were often attempting to wound the parent companies or the owners of those media outlets that he deemed insufficiently respectful. He intervened to try to block the takeover of CNN's parent company by AT&T. He intervened, the Defense Department allegedly intervened to block Amazon receiving a multi-billion-dollar contract with the Defense Department. Ultimately, it was forced to give Amazon part of the contract, even though it had sought to give all of it to Microsoft. So you've seen that he's willing to do that. Well, just as you've highlighted for viewers just now, on the campaign trail in 2022, he said he would jail reporters who refused to share confidential sources for government leaks. And this year, he's been saying time and again he wanted to punish the three broadcast networks, CBS, ABC, NBC, for various perceived elements of coverage or moderating debates or fact-checking or other things that he thought were disrespectful to him. Well, ultimately, he can't take away the network's broadcast licenses, but he could try to gum up the works for the 80 local stations that those three networks own between them. And what he's really indicating is directionally, I'm willing to exact vengeance on those who cover me in ways I don't like. It is hard for many folks inside the Washington Post that I've spoken to over the last 24 hours, and particularly in the last 5 hours, to disassociate those threats from what they've seen play out today, given Bezos' myriad billion-dollar interests before the federal government right now.